The massive starship cut through space like a silver blade against the black void. Commander Daeho stood on the bridge watching the blue-green planet grow larger on the main screen. His crew had been traveling for months, searching for new worlds, to add to the Galactic Federation database. This planet looked ordinary from space, just another world with primitive life navigator. So-Min checked her instruments and frowned. The readings made no sense. She called out to Daeho that something was wrong with the scanners. Deep beneath the planet's surface, something metal was giving off strange signals. It was huge, whatever it was, and buried under miles of rock and dirt weapons. Specialist Taewoo ran additional scans from his station. The metal object was perfectly smooth and showed no signs of rust or decay, despite being underground for what looked like thousands of years. Science Officer Ye-jin joined the discussion, saying the composition was unlike anything in their databases. The metal seemed to absorb their scanning beams instead of reflecting them back. Daeho made the decision to land near the strange readings. They chose a spot in what the locals called North America, far from any primitive settlements the ship touched, down in a forest clearing, and the crew prepared for exploration. Captain Boram led the archaeological team while Engineer Haiwan set up the drilling equipment. The first day of digging revealed nothing but dirt and rocks. Security Officer Kyung-min kept watch while the others worked. The primitive humans seemed unaware of their presence, which was good for maintaining the non-interference protocols. Lieutenant Hyun-soo monitored communications to make sure no local governments detected them. On the second day, they hit something hard. The drilling equipment sparked and shut down when it touched the buried object. Dr. Yoo-jin examined the metal samples they managed to extract. The material was unlike anything they had seen before. It felt warm to the touch and seemed to shimmer with internal light. Boram called for more advanced equipment from the ship. They needed to excavate carefully to avoid damaging whatever lay beneath. The metal object extended far beyond what their initial scans had suggested. It was not just large, it was enormous. Possibly the size of a city. As they dug deeper, strange things began to happen. The excavation site glowed with soft blue light at night. Animals avoided the area completely. Plants near the dig site grew faster and stronger than normal. Ye-jin documented everything, but could not explain the phenomena. Taewoo reported that the buried object was definitely artificial. The smooth curves and precise angles proved it was built by intelligent beings. The construction showed mathematical precision beyond what most galactic civilizations could achieve. The metal itself seemed to be composed of elements that should not exist in stable form. On the third day, they finally exposed a section, large enough to examine closely. The surface was covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. The markings seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Boram tried to photograph them, but the images came out blurred and distorted. Daeho ordered his team to be extra careful as they continued the excavation. Whatever this object was, it had properties that defied known science. The symbols alone suggested a level of technology far beyond what they expected to find on this primitive. World engineer Minho joined the team to help with the technical analysis. He had experience with ancient technologies from across the galaxy, but nothing in his records matched what they were finding. The construction techniques were impossible, using any known methods. The metal showed no tool marks or joining seams. So-Min discovered that the object was not just buried but actually growing into the surrounding rock. The metal had somehow fused with the earth itself, creating a perfect seal that had preserved it for millennia. The dating equipment suggested the object had been underground for over 200,000 years. Ye-jin made a disturbing discovery when she analyzed soil samples from different depths. The object had been deliberately buried. Someone or something had gone to great lengths to hide it from detection. The burial process would have required massive machinery and careful planning. The team worked for days to expose more of the object's surface. They found what appeared to be an entrance sealed with the same strange metal. As they cleared away the last of the dirt and rock, they realized they were looking at something impossible. A spacecraft buried beneath the Earth for longer than most civilizations had existed. Daeho contacted the main ship for additional personnel and equipment. This discovery was too important for a small archaeological team. They needed xenospecialists and technology experts. The buried ship was clearly of alien origin, but Its technology surpassed anything in their databases. Kyung-min set up perimeter sensors to detect any approaching humans. The primitive locals showed no interest in their activities, but the commander wanted to be prepared. The non-interference directive was clear. They could not let the native population discover advanced alien technology. As more of the ship became visible, the crew realized its true size. The vessel stretched for kilometers underground. It had been built on a scale that suggested its creators thought in terms of moving entire populations. The hull design showed aerodynamic properties for atmospheric flight, but also features for deep space travel. Eugene found evidence that the ship had not crashed but had been carefully positioned before burial. The surrounding geology showed signs of artificial modification. Someone had reshaped the landscape to create the perfect hiding place. The burial was not an emergency procedure, but a planned operation. Bo-Ram studied the symbols covering the hull and made a breakthrough discovery. The markings were not random decorations but complex mathematical formulas. The equations described principles of physics that galactic science was only beginning to understand. Some concepts were completely unknown. Taiwu detected energy signatures deep within the buried vessel. The ship was not dead but somehow still powered after all these millennia. The energy source was undetectable by conventional means, but its effects could be measured indirectly. The realization that they were standing on an active alien spacecraft sent chills through the crew. On the final day of excavation, they found the main entrance. The sealed portal was perfectly preserved, showing no signs of age or weathering. As they prepared cutting equipment to breach the hull, the symbols around the entrance began to glow with increasing brightness. Ho realized they had reached the point of no return. Opening this ancient vessel would change everything. They thought they knew about galactic history. The implications were staggering. If such advanced technology existed hundreds of thousands of years ago, why was this world now populated by primitives? The crew gathered around the entrance as the cutting beam activated. The ancient metal resisted their most advanced tools but slowly began to yield. Whatever secrets lay within this impossible ship would soon be revealed, and Daeho suspected that the galaxy would never be the same. The cutting beam finally pierced through the ancient metal, and immediately alarms started screaming from every instrument on the excavation site. The buried ship came alive with blinding flashes of light and energy barriers that appeared from nowhere. Security Officer Kyung-min barely jumped back in time, as geometric patterns of pure force materialized in the air around the breach. The energy barriers formed perfect mathematical shapes that hurt to look at directly. Engineer Haewon tried to scan them, but his instruments exploded in showers of sparks. The barriers existed in more than 3 dimensions, somehow folding space around themselves in ways that made no scientific sense. Commander Daeho ordered his team to pull back to a safe distance while they studied these impossible defenses. The ship was definitely responding to their presence, but the technology involved was beyond anything in galactic databases. The energy patterns showed intelligence but followed rules of physics that did not exist in their textbooks. Science Officer Yejin managed to get readings from a distance using passive sensors. The barriers were not just energy fields but actual manipulations of space and time. The ship was bending reality itself to create defenses that could not be overcome by conventional means. After several hours, the energy barriers suddenly disappeared as quickly as they had appeared. The breach in the hull remained open, but now glowed with soft blue light from within Navigator. Somin detected no immediate dangers from her scanner readings, but the interior of the ship remained a complete mystery. Daeho led a small team through the opening with Kyung-min providing security. The inside of the ship defied every expectation they had formed. The corridor stretched away into impossible distances that could not fit within the hull's external dimensions. The walls curved in directions that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. The architecture made no sense according to known engineering principles. Engineer Minho tried to map their path, but his instruments could not create a coherent layout. The passages folded back on themselves while somehow leading to completely new sections of the ship. The internal space was larger than the external hull could possibly contain. Strange symbols covered every surface inside the ship, but these markings were different from those outside. Captain Boram studied them carefully and realized they were not decorative but functional. The symbols seemed to be part of the ship's operating system, somehow integrated into the very structure of the vesselays. They moved deeper into the ship. The corridors began to change around them. Walls shifted, position. When they were not looking directly at them, passages appeared where none had existed moments before. The ship seemed to be reconfiguring itself in response to their presence. The team reached what appeared to be a central chamber filled with crystalline structures that hummed with internal energy. The crystals were arranged in complex patterns that suggested advanced technology. Dr. Eugene approached one of the larger formations, and her scanner readings went completely insane. The crystalline structures contained something that shocked the entire team to their core. The formations were not just technology, but storage devices for living consciousness. Millions of minds were preserved within the quantum matrices, suspended in a state between life and death. Somin accidentally activated one of the storage units while trying to get better scanner readings. The crystal began to glow brighter, and a holographic figure materialized in the center of the chamber. The being appeared humanoid but with features that seemed both familiar and completely alien. The holographic figure spoke in a language that their universal translators struggled to process. At first the words meant nothing, but gradually patterns emerged, and meaning became clear. The entity introduced itself as Jin Wu, claiming to be a guardian of this vessel. Jin Wu looked around the chamber with eyes that held the weight of countless years. He seemed surprised to see visitors, but not alarmed. His first words in their language were a question about what year it was and whether the danger had passed. The guardian explained that this was not an alien ship at all, but a human vessel from Earth's distant past. Humanity had once possessed technology that made their current galactic civilization look primitive by comparison. The ship was called the Eternal Vigil, designed as an ark to preserve human knowledge through catastrophic events. Daeho could not believe what he was hearing. The primitive humans on the surface were descendants of a civilization that had mastered space and time itself. The contradiction made no sense, but Jin Wu insisted it was true and offered to show them proof. The holographic guardian led them through chambers filled with impossible technologies that demonstrated the truth of his claims. Matter converters created complex materials from pure energy. Gravity manipulators treated space-time like clay that could be shaped at will. Consciousness transfer devices could back up and restore entire personalities. Each new discovery made their advanced galactic technology seem like primitive tools in comparison. Lieutenant Hyun Soo watched devices that could fold space across galactic distances. Engineer Haiwan stared at power sources that drew energy directly from quantum fluctuations in empty space. Jin Wu showed them historical records that revealed the full scope of ancient human achievements. They had built a galactic empire spanning thousands of star system cities floated in space, powered by harvested stellar energy. Planets could be terraformed in decades using technologies that reshaped matter at the atomic level. The Guardian explained that ancient humanity had not been destroyed, but had chosen to hide their true nature. They had faced a cosmic threat so terrible that they buried their greatest achievements and pretended to be primitives. The deception had been necessary for survival. Eugene examined biological samples preserved in the ship's archives. The DNA analysis confirmed the impossible truth. These ancient humans were genetically identical to the primitive inhabitants on the surface. The same species that struggled with basic technology had once built machines that could reshape reality itself. Taewoo discovered weapon systems that operated on principles their science could not grasp. These were not energy weapons but reality manipulation devices that could alter the fundamental constants of physics in localized areas. A single shot could make a planet's gravity turn against itself. The implications were staggering. If humanity had possessed such power, why had they given it up? Jin Wu explained that their advancement had attracted something even more dangerous. Entities from outside known space that fed on consciousness itself. The Devourers consumed civilizations not for resources, but for the essence of intelligent life. Ancient humanity had discovered that their rapid technological progress created a beacon that drew these cosmic predators. The only way to survive was to hide so completely that even they forgot their own true nature. The buried ships were insurance policies, waiting for the day when their protection would be needed again. Boram studied the consciousness storage systems and realized their true purpose. These were not just backup devices, but the preserved minds of humanity's greatest thinkers, scientists, philosophers, and generals, whose knowledge surpassed anything currently known, waited in quantum suspension. The Guardian revealed that the ship's awakening was not coincidence, but automatic response to detected threats. The Devourers had returned to this part of the galaxy following the expansion of new civilizations. The very galactic community that Dehos people represented had grown advanced enough to attract attention. Once again, Jinwu showed them star charts marking the progress of the cosmic threat. Entire sectors on the galactic rim were going silent, as the Devourers consumed civilization after civilization. The ancient safeguards built by humanity were activating across the galaxy as buried ships prepared to fulfill promises made across millennia. The revelation left the crew stunned and confused. Everything they thought they knew about galactic history was wrong. Humanity was not a primitive species, but the hidden guardians of all intelligent life. Their own civilization existed only because ancient humans had sacrificed everything to protect them from threats beyond imagination. Jinwu guided the stunned crew deeper into the eternal vigil, revealing chambers that challenged everything they thought they understood about technology and physics. The Guardian moved through corridors that reconfigured themselves at his command, walls flowing like liquid to create new passages as needed. The first chamber they entered contained manufacturing systems that created matter from pure energy. Commander Deho watched in amazement as raw quantum fluctuations were transformed into complex alloys that should not exist according to known science. The process violated conservation laws but worked perfectly. Engineer Min Ho studied the gravity manipulation devices that treated space-time like clay to be shaped at will. These machines could create localized alterations in the fundamental forces of physics, turning gravity inside out or making time flow at different rates in adjacent areas. Science Officer Ye Jin examined consciousness transfer equipment that could back up entire personalities and restore them in new bodies. The technology went beyond simple memory storage to preserve the actual essence of what made each individual unique. The implications were staggering. Dr. Yu Jin analyzed biological samples from the ships, vast archives discovering that ancient humanity had mastered genetic engineering on a scale that dwarfed current galactic achievements. They had created new forms of life adapted for specific environments and purposes, including some that could survive in the vacuum of space. The ship's historical records painted a picture of human civilization that spanned the galaxy at its height. Cities floated between stars, harvesting energy directly from stellar cores. Planets were reshaped according to artistic vision as well as practical need. Humanity had become masters of creation itself. Navigator So Min studied star charts, showing the extent of ancient human territory. Thousands of systems had been connected by transportation networks that folded space, allowing instant travel across galactic distances. Trade and communication flowed freely through an empire that dwarfed anything currently existing. Captain Boram discovered archives containing the accumulated knowledge of millions of human scientists, philosophers, and artists. The information was stored not in simple databases but in quantum matrices that preserved thought patterns and creative processes. The stored minds could be consulted as if they were still alive weapons. Specialist Taewoo found armories containing devices that redefined the concept of warfare. These were not conventional weapons but tools that could manipulate the fundamental forces holding matter together. A single device could unravel the nuclear binding that held atoms in place. The Guardian explained that humanity had achieved these advances through a combination of scientific breakthrough and philosophical evolution. They had learned to think beyond the limitations of three-dimensional space and linear time. Their mathematics incorporated concepts that current galactic civilization was only beginning to discover. Security Officer Kyung Min examined defense systems that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The shields could deflect attacks that had not yet been launched by predicting the quantum probability states of incoming threats. The technology bordered on precognition. Jin Woo revealed that ancient humanity's greatest achievement was also the source of their downfall. They had learned to manipulate the quantum foam that underlies all reality. creating weapons and tools that operated at the most fundamental level of existence. Their power had grown beyond anything previously imagined. The breakthrough came when human scientists discovered how to access what they called the zero-point field, the quantum energy that exists in empty space itself. This infinite power source allowed them to reshape matter and energy at will, but also sent ripples through dimensions beyond normal space-time. These ripples attracted attention from entities that existed outside the known universe. The Devourers were drawn to the quantum disturbances created by advanced civilizations like moths to flame. They consumed not matter or energy but consciousness itself, feeding on the spark that made life truly alive. Lieutenant Hyun-soo studied records of the first Devourer encounters, showing how conventional weapons and defenses proved useless against beings that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The entities could absorb any attack and use the energy to grow stronger. The cosmic predators did not destroy civilizations in the conventional sense. Instead, they drained away everything that made life worth living, leaving behind empty shells that could move and speak but had lost all creativity, imagination, and joy. The victims remained technically alive but were no longer truly living. Ancient humanity realized they faced an enemy that grew stronger by consuming the very qualities that defined intelligent life. Fighting the Devourers with conventional methods only provided them with more consciousness to devour. A completely different approach was needed. Engineer Hae-won discovered records of the desperate experiments humanity conducted, trying to find ways to fight beings that fed on thought itself. They developed weapons that attacked quantum consciousness patterns and shields that hid mental activity from detection. The solution they eventually found required the most difficult sacrifice imaginable. To save all intelligent life in the galaxy, humanity would have to abandon their advanced civilization and pretend to be primitives. The deception had to be complete, enough to fool entities that could sense consciousness across galactic distances. Jin-woo showed them the planning documents for Operation Silent Dawn, the massive undertaking that would hide humanity in plain sight. The project required downloading the consciousness of their greatest minds into quantum storage systems while wiping the memories of everyone else. The consciousness transfer technology allowed them to preserve their knowledge and personalities in crystalline matrices that could survive for millions of years. These storage systems were then installed in arc ships like the Eternal Vigil and buried on planets throughout the galaxy. The remaining human population underwent voluntary memory modification procedures that reduced them to apparent primitives who posed no threat to cosmic predators. Their descendants would live simple lives completely unaware of their true heritage, until the day came when their protection was needed again. Dr. Yu Jin examined the memory modification technology, discovering how thoroughly the process had been implemented. Every trace of advanced knowledge was removed from the conscious minds of those who remained. The hidden humans became genuinely primitive in every way that mattered to the Devourers. The plan had worked perfectly for hundreds of thousands of years. The cosmic predators found no trace of the advanced civilization that had attracted their attention and moved on to other parts of the universe. Humanity remained hidden, while their buried guardians waited patiently. Bo-ram studied the activation protocols built into the arc ships, discovering that the Eternal Vigil had awakened automatically in response to specific conditions. The return of Devourer activity to this galactic region had triggered systems that had been dormant for millennia. Tae-woo learned that similar ships were buried throughout the galaxy, each containing the preserved consciousness of ancient human experts. All of these vessels were connected through quantum communication networks that allowed instant coordination across impossible distances. The Guardian revealed that the waiting period was ending. The Devourers had returned following the expansion of new galactic civilizations that had grown advanced enough to attract attention. Entire sectors on the galactic rim were already falling silent as the cosmic predators began their feast. Ye-jin realized the terrible irony of the situation. The very Galactic Federation that had discovered Earth was part of the threat. The expansion of technology and consciousness across the galaxy had created exactly the kind of beacon that drew Devourer attention. Jin-woo explained that ancient humanity had foreseen this moment and prepared accordingly. The buried ships contained not only preserved knowledge but also weapons and defenses, specifically designed to fight entities that consumed consciousness itself. The revelation left Deho's crew struggling to understand their place in this vast hidden history. They had discovered not just an ancient artifact but the secret guardians of all intelligent life. The primitive world they had been surveying was actually the headquarters of the galaxy's true protectors. The weight of responsibility began to settle on their shoulders as they realized that they might be the first to learn the truth. The survival of every thinking being in the galaxy could depend on what they chose to do with this incredible knowledge. Jinwu activated the ship's main historical database, filling the chamber with holographic displays that showed the final days of ancient human civilization. Commander Deho and his crew watched in stunned silence as the truth of humanity's greatest sacrifice unfolded before their eyes. The records revealed how desperate the situation had become as Devourer scout forces probed the edges of human space. Entire star systems fell silent as the cosmic predators consumed the consciousness of billions, leaving behind empty worlds populated by living shells with no spark of true life remaining. Ancient humanity had tried conventional warfare, first deploying fleets of reality. Warping battleships against the invaders, Lieutenant Hyun-soo studied tactical records showing how human weapons that could unravel stars proved useless against enemies that fed on the very act of resistance itself. Every attack only made the Devourers stronger as they absorbed the creativity and determination of those who opposed them. The entities grew more intelligent with each mind they consumed, learning human tactics and turning them against their creators in increasingly sophisticated ways. Science Officer Ye Jin examined the research data showing how human scientists desperately sought weaknesses in beings that existed partially outside normal space-time. The Devourers could phase in and out of reality at will, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. The breakthrough came when researchers realized that consciousness itself was both the Devourers' strength and their only vulnerability. The entities needed thinking minds to sustain themselves, but could be starved if intelligent life became genuinely undetectable. Navigator Somin watched historical footage of the great debate that tore ancient human society apart. Some argued for evacuation to other galaxies, while others insisted that running would only delay the inevitable. The Devourers would eventually find them, no matter how far they fled. The final decision required a level of sacrifice that no civilization had ever attempted, before humanity would voluntarily abandon everything that made them advanced, preserving their knowledge in hidden archives while reducing their living population to apparent primitives. Engineer Minho studied the technical specifications for Operation Silent Dawn, discovering the incredible complexity involved in hiding an entire galactic civilization. The project required coordination across thousands of worlds and millions of individuals all working toward the same impossible goal. The consciousness transfer technology had been perfected specifically for this purpose, allowing the personalities and memories of their greatest minds to be preserved in quantum storage systems. These crystalline matrices could maintain coherent thought patterns for millions of years. Captain Boram examined records of the volunteers who chose to have their consciousness preserved, rather than undergo memory modification. The archived minds included scientists whose knowledge surpassed entire modern universities and military strategists who understood warfare on a galactic scale. The memory modification process was even more remarkable, completely removing all traces of advanced knowledge from the minds of those who would remain. The procedure was so thorough that the subjects genuinely became the primitives. They appeared to be. Dr. Yujin analyzed the biological aspects of the transformation, discovering how human genetics had been carefully altered to ensure their descendants would develop along predictable lines. The modifications guaranteed that future generations would remain at primitive technology levels. Weapons. Specialist Tae Woo found records of the reality manipulation weapons that were buried alongside the Arc ships. These devices could alter the fundamental constants of physics in localized areas, turning gravity against itself or making atoms forget how to hold together. The defensive systems were equally impressive, using consciousness masking technology that made intelligent life genuinely invisible to entities that hunted by detecting mental activity. The shields worked by creating quantum interference patterns that disrupted psychic detection. Security Officer Kyung Min studied the protocols for awakening the buried systems, discovering that multiple fail-safes ensured the Guardians would only activate when truly needed. The return of Devourer activity to this galactic region had triggered automatic responses across dozens of hidden sites. The holographic records showed the final days as humanity implemented their desperate plan. Massive construction ships worked around the clock to build and bury the Ark vessels, while consciousness transfer facilities processed millions of volunteers who chose preservation over oblivion. Entire populations underwent the memory modification procedure in carefully orchestrated waves. The process had to be timed perfectly to prevent any remaining advanced humans from accidentally revealing the deception through their behavior or knowledge. Engineer Hae-won watched footage of cities being deliberately destroyed and technology being buried or scattered to create the appearance of civilizational collapse. The cover-up was so complete that even archaeological evidence would support the story of primitive development. The quantum communication networks linking the buried ships were installed using technology that existed in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, the system could coordinate responses across galactic distances without creating any detectable energy signatures. Jin Woo revealed that the Eternal Vigil was just one node in this vast network, with similar vessels buried on hundreds of worlds throughout the galaxy. Each ship contained specialized knowledge and equipment designed for different aspects of the eventual resistance. The Guardian showed them star charts marking the locations of other buried facilities, including massive manufacturing complexes that could build fleets of advanced ships and weapon foundries that could produce reality-altering armaments on an industrial scale. Lieutenant Hyun-soo studied the activation sequences, discovering that the awakening process was already spreading throughout the galaxy. Other buried Guardians were coming online in response to detected Devourer activity, sharing information through their quantum networks. The records revealed that ancient humanity had not acted alone in implementing their plan. Several allied species had chosen to participate in the deception, hiding their own advanced civilizations to avoid attracting Devourer attention. These alien allies had also buried Guardian systems linked to the human network, creating a galaxy-spanning defense grid that could coordinate responses across multiple species and civilizations. The cooperation required unprecedented trust and sacrifice. Yu Jin found evidence that some advanced beings had chosen a different form of preservation, uploading their consciousness into artificial bodies that could wait in suspended animation for thousands of years. These synthetic Guardians were hidden in locations throughout the galaxy. The depth of planning was staggering, as ancient humanity had anticipated every possible scenario and prepared contingencies for each one. They had studied Devourer behavior patterns across multiple galactic invasions, developing strategies based on centuries of observation. Bo Ram discovered records of the psychological preparation required for Operation Silent Dawn, knowing that failure would mean not just death, but the consumption of everything that made life worth living. The volunteers who underwent consciousness transfer were heroes beyond measure. Tai Wu examined weapon specifications that pushed the boundaries of what technology could achieve. These devices operated by manipulating quantum probability itself, making enemy attacks statistically unlikely to succeed, while ensuring friendly forces achieved impossible victories. The final phase of the operation involved creating false histories and archaeological evidence that would support the cover story. Advanced humans had literally rewritten the past to hide their true nature from any investigation, including their own descendants. Jin Woo explained that the deception had been so successful that even the buried Guardians had been programmed to remain dormant unless specific threat conditions were met. The system was designed to prevent accidental discovery while ensuring readiness when needed. The holographic displays showed the moment when the last advanced human underwent memory modification, completing the transformation that would hide their civilization for hundreds of thousands of years. The sacrifice was absolute and irreversible. As the records ended, Dae-ho and his crew began to understand the true magnitude of what they had discovered. They were witnesses to the greatest act of heroism in galactic history, when an entire civilization chose to sacrifice themselves to protect all future intelligent life. The weight of this knowledge settled heavily on their shoulders as they realized that the time of hiding was ending. The ancient guardians were awakening, and the galaxy would soon need protectors once again. Jinwoo turned to face Commander Daeho and his crew with an expression that carried the weight of eons. The holographic guardian had shared the greatest secret in galactic history, and now came the moment that would determine the fate of all intelligent life. The choice before them was simple in concept but staggering in implications. They could accept guardianship of ancient human technology and the terrible responsibility that came with it, or they could walk away and leave the galaxy defenseless. Against the returning Devourer Science Officer Ye Jin was the first to speak, asking what accepting guardianship would actually mean. Jinwoo explained that they would gain access to weapons and technologies that could instantly make their civilization the most powerful force in known space, but the price was eternal vigilance. The consciousness transfer process would expand their minds, allowing them to interface directly with reality manipulation systems. They would gain knowledge that spanned millions of years and perspectives that encompassed entire galaxies, but they would also inherit the burden of protecting all thinking beings. Engineer Min Ho studied technical readouts, showing the scope of power being offered. Ships that could travel faster than light by folding space itself. Weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas. Manufacturing systems that could build fleets from raw quantum energy navigator. So-min argued strongly for accepting the offer immediately. Her people had encountered strange disappearances in distant sectors that now made perfect sense. Entire star systems going silent without explanation could only mean one thing. The Devourers had already begun their advance. Captain Boram raised concerns about the moral implications of wielding such absolute power. Ancient humanity might have created these systems with noble intentions, but power, this vast, had no safeguards against corruption. What would prevent the Guardians from becoming the very threat they were meant to stop? The debate that followed tore at the heart of everything they believed about right and wrong. Lieutenant Hyun-soo pointed out that billions of innocent beings would die if they refused the responsibility. Their own moral comfort meant nothing compared to the survival of entire civilizations. Dr. Yu Jin argued the opposite perspective, saying that accepting godlike power was exactly the kind of hubris that had attracted the Devourers in the first place. Perhaps the galaxy would be safer if they found another way to fight beings that consumed consciousness itself. Weapons specialist Tae Woo examined the reality, warping weapons more closely, discovering that they operated on principles that made conventional defenses meaningless. A single shot could cause a planet's gravity to reverse or make its atmosphere forget how to hold together. Engineer Haewon worried about the psychological effects of interfacing with technology that existed across multiple dimensions. The human mind was not designed to comprehend 11-dimensional mathematics or manipulate quantum probability fields. Security Officer Kyung Min raised practical concerns about maintaining such advanced systems. The Guardians would need to remain hidden while simultaneously coordinating galactic defense operations. The logistics seemed impossible without eventually being discovered. Jinwoo listened patiently to their arguments before revealing information that changed. Everything the Devourers were not just returning, but were moving faster than ancient humanity had predicted. 3 civilizations in the Outer Rim had already been completely consumed. The holographic displays showed real-time updates from the quantum communication network. Other Guardian ships were reporting contact with Devourer scout forces. The cosmic predators were testing galactic defenses and finding them laughably inadequate. The entities had evolved during their long absence, developing new tactics and abilities that surpassed even ancient human predictions. They could now absorb not just individual consciousness, but entire technological networks feeding on the collective intelligence of connected civilizations. Modern galactic society with its quantum communication grids and shared databases was particularly vulnerable. The very connections that allowed rapid coordination also provided pathways for the Devourers to spread their influence across multiple worlds simultaneously. Time was running out as the cosmic predators accelerated their advance toward the galactic core. They had learned from previous invasions and were moving more efficiently than ever before. Within months, they would reach populated sectors containing billions of thinking beings. Dae-ho realized that philosophical debates about the nature of power were luxuries they could no longer afford. The choice was not between power and restraint, but between action and the death of everything worth protecting in the universe. Ye-jin studied the consciousness preservation systems more carefully, discovering that the process was not as invasive as she had feared. The technology enhanced rather than replaced natural mental abilities, allowing guardians to retain their essential humanity while gaining cosmic perspective. Boram found records showing how ancient human guardians had maintained their moral compass across millennia of service. They had created philosophical frameworks and ethical safeguards that prevented the corruption of absolute power. The decision framework became clearer as they learned more about the Guardian protocols. No single individual or species would control the ancient technology. Instead, the power would be distributed among multiple civilizations, creating checks and balances. Minho discovered that similar offers were being made to representatives of other species throughout the galaxy. The Guardian network was designed to include diverse perspectives, ensuring that no one viewpoint could dominate decision-making. So-min received updates from their ship in orbit confirming that other vessels in their fleet had detected similar quantum signatures across multiple star systems. The awakening was happening, galaxy-wide, as buried Guardians responded to the growing threat. The quantum communication network allowed them to coordinate with newly awakened Guardians from dozens of different species. Each group brought unique perspectives and capabilities to the emerging resistance. The diversity was a strength that ancient humanity had planned for. Taewoo realized that the weapon systems were designed with multiple authorization requirements. No single Guardian could activate the most powerful devices without agreement from others. The safeguards prevented abuse while ensuring rapid response to genuine threats. Hyun-soo studied the training protocols, discovering that the consciousness expansion process was gradual and reversible. New Guardians would gain abilities slowly while retaining the option to step down if the burden became too great. Yoo-jin found evidence that many ancient Guardians had lived normal lives between periods of active service. The role did not require constant vigilance, but rather readiness to act when needed. The responsibility was shared across vast numbers of individuals. Kyung-min learned that the hidden nature of the Guardian network was maintained through advanced stealth technology that made their activities undetectable to conventional sensors. They could operate openly while remaining invisible to those they protected. The final piece of information that decided the debate came from deep space monitoring stations. Other galactic civilizations were beginning to disappear at an accelerating rate. The window for preparation was closing rapidly. Hae-1 calculated that without Guardian intervention, the Devourers would reach the galactic core within 2 standard years. The timeline left no room for hesitation or further debate. Action had to be taken immediately as the crew weighed their decision. Jinwoo revealed the most important fact of all. The ancient consciousness stored in the Eternal Vigil included individuals who had faced similar choices across millions of years. Their wisdom and experience would guide new Guardians. The holographic Guardian made it clear that accepting the role was not just about gaining power, but about joining a brotherhood that transcended species and time. The Guardians were united by their willingness to sacrifice personal comfort for the protection of all thinking life. Dae-ho looked around at his crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. The choice was clear. Despite its terrible implications, they would accept the burden of guardianship and stand against the darkness that threatened to consume everything. The decision would transform them forever. But the alternative was watching helplessly as the galaxy, inside the crew of the starship, had found more than an ancient artifact they had found. After intense debate, Dae-ho makes the choice that will define the galaxy's future. They accept guardianship of the Eternal Vigil and the terrible responsibility that comes with it. But instead of keeping this power within their own civilization, they decide to share the burden across multiple species and cultures. Working with Jinwoo's stored consciousness, they develop a plan to awaken similar buried ships throughout the galaxy. Each vessel chooses guardians from different civilizations, creating a network of protectors who can check each other's power while working toward the common goal of survival. The transformation begins immediately. Crew members undergo consciousness expansion procedures that allow them to interface directly with the ship's reality manipulation systems. Taewoo learns to operate weapons that can target specific quantum states, while Yujin masters medical technologies that can repair damage at the molecular level. But the real change comes when they make contact with other awakening ships. Captain Sung-ho discovers that humanity's ancient plan was even more elaborate than they imagined. The buried vessels form a communication network that spans the galaxy, sharing information instantly across impossible distances using quantum entanglement, on a massive scale. As the new Guardians master their abilities, reports arrive confirming their worst fears. The Devourers have accelerated their advance, consuming entire sectors with increasing speed. But now the galaxy has hope. Ancient human technology, combined with the diverse perspectives of multiple civilizations, creates defensive capabilities that exceed even the original builders' expectations. The first major battle comes sooner than expected. A Devourer swarm attacks a populated system, expecting easy prey. Instead, they encounter Guardian ships that fight using laws of physics the cosmic predators have never seen before. Reality itself becomes a weapon as space-time bends to protect the innocent and trap the invaders. The victory proves that ancient humanity's sacrifice wasn't in vain. Their descendants, both genetic and spiritual, now stand ready to protect all intelligent life. The galaxy has Guardians who understand that true strength comes not from conquest, but from the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect others. The Eternal Vigil and its sister ships patrol the darkness between stars, crewed by beings who chose responsibility over power, protection over domination. They are the inheritors of humanity's greatest legacy, the knowledge that sometimes the strongest choice is learning when to appear weak, and the wisest path forward is remembering what truly matters when everything is at stake. The galaxy sleeps, safely, watched over by Guardians who understand that the greatest victories are often won by those who choose to forget their own strength until the moment it becomes absolutely necessary.